And Jim Jones knew this is the end. And so he mixed these tubs of punch, and they were laced with cyanide. The expression, "you drank the Kool-Aid," is an allusion to Jonestown, and almost 1,000 people died.
Wow.
In one day in 1978. And that was Jonestown.
Did you go into Jim Jones?
Yeah, Jim Jones was at one time a very popular figure in San Francisco. He was considered one of the leading lights of social action in the Bay Area. He was very connected to the Democratic Party, to Democratic leaders, Governor Jerry Brown, Assemblyman Willie Brown. When Rosalind Carter visited San Francisco, she did a photo op with Jim Jones. So Jim Jones was a kind of icon. And the People's Temple was a huge church with thousands and thousands of members, but no one really knew what was going on inside. And so ultimately what happened is that people that left started to talk about the abuse they experienced, children being beaten brutally, people being exploited financially, and people came out of the church and they talked to the media. And so Jim Jones became more and more paranoid, again, a malignant narcissist, a psychopath, and then he decided, I'm leaving the Bay Area because the press is against me, the media is against me. I used to be a celebrity, now they say bad things about me. I'm going to pack up and leave. And so he took about 1,000 of his most devoted followers, and he moved to English-speaking Guyana in South America. In the middle of the jungle, they carved out a little community that they called Jonestown. He controlled all communications, all social interaction. People were totally isolated. Now comes families of those 1,000 people. And in particular, they approached Congressman Leo J. Ryan. And they said, please help us. We're very worried about our family members, our children, our grandchildren that are in Jonestown. Leo J. Ryan then gets Jim Jones to agree for him to come on a fact-finding trip with his staff to Jonestown. He comes there. At first, things go fairly well. Then people are passing notes to Ryan and his staff. Take me with you. I want to get out of here. Bad things are happening in here that you don't know. And so Jones ultimately agrees to let some of these people go with Ryan. And then he recognizes that they're going to tell what's really going on in Jonestown. And so he dispatches his security force, and they murder everyone. Some people survive. Jackie Speer, one of Leo J. Ryan's staff members who would later become a United States congressman from his very district, was shot 5 times and almost bled out, but she miraculously survived. Other people survived as well, but Leo J. Ryan was killed. And Jim Jones knew this is the end. They're going to come for me. And he was right. The authorities were coming from Georgetown in Guyana for him. And so he mixed these tubs of punch, and they were laced with cyanide. And he insisted that all of his people take the cyanide. And so that's what, when the phrase came, you drank the Kool-Aid, because people would say, well, it was Kool-Aid, and the people in Jonestown drank the Kool-Aid and they died. And so the expression, you drank the Kool-Aid, is an allusion to Jonestown and the idea that you're brainwashed, that you're not thinking clearly. Mm-hmm. So many of the people in Jonestown were forced to drink the Kool-Aid. They didn't have a choice. The children, there were hundreds of them. They were all murdered. There were people that were shot that were trying to run away. So it was a massacre, and almost 1,000 people died.
Wow.
in one day in 1978. And that was Jonestown. And that was really the beginning of people saying, well, what about these cults? What's going on? Because people started to write about them and write about Jim Jones. Of course, Jonestown came before me because I started my work in 82. So that was 4 years after Jonestown. But I remember Jonestown. And I also remember Charlie Manson. And I remember Patty Hearst, who was abducted by a cult called the Symbionese Liberation Army. So cults were becoming known before Jonestown, but at Jonestown, that was the shock that really woke everybody up, that this could be very, very bad. And of course, since Jonestown, there have been a number of cult tragedies. Another is the movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments in Uganda. In 2000, the leader of that group, Joseph Kebwetere, ordered the deaths of over 700 of his followers. And right now, there's a man named Paul Mackenzie in Kenya, and he is responsible for the starvation deaths of over 400 of his followers, many children. Why? Because he said it's the end of the world. That's what Joseph Kebwetere said. That's what Paul Mackenzie said. We have to get ready. It's the end. And the end it was for their followers. 750 in Uganda, 400 in Kenya. And then, of course, we know about the suicide of the people of the Solar Temple, which was in Europe. And those were the followers of Luc Jouret. They all died in what could have been a murder or a suicide. There were almost 100 of them. And then there was Heaven's Gate around the same time in the 90s, that 39 people in a house rented by their leader, all died together because he determined that this was the end and that they were going to somehow move from their bodies to a level above human. So we have had a number of cult tragedies, and they have happened over and over again, some of them worse than others. And I think that of course, these are the most extreme groups where people die. But there are many groups where people's lives are horribly damaged, where they lose their job, they drop out of school, they become estranged and isolated from family and old friends, they lose all their money because of some group. They're not dead, but they've been badly hurt. And so this is the reason that people pay attention to these groups, not because of their beliefs, but because of their behavior and how they negatively impact people's lives.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.